Coronavirus lockdown day 3, it's becoming the world's longest Metal Base Monday. Okay, so a couple of channel updates and some orders of business real quick before we get into the topics. Going to be doing some live stuff, and just a note to everybody who may be watching and my subscribers, thank all of you so much. Definitely, if you're subscribing, and I hope you are, that you make sure you're checked with the bell and alerts on for YouTube. Been looking at some of the back end and the stats lately, and apparently a lot of people aren't coming or know that videos are getting posted because YouTube isn't sending those alerts through. And especially with having like some live chat stuff coming up and some special things going on, you won't know until after they're already done if you don't have that stuff going on. It was also kind of made evident that a lot of times when I post things on Facebook or on Instagram, a lot of people have been telling me that that's where they actually find out new videos have come out and they're not getting the YouTube alerts even though they're a subscriber. So definitely make sure at least all that's checked. I don't know what the deal is with YouTube, but that's the only way around it as far as I can see. And with some of the live stuff that I'm definitely getting geared up to do, it'd be great to have everybody included and get to interact with everybody some more. So it'd be cool to have you in rather than just seeing it on the replay. So then number 2, if you haven't already, check out the series that I did with Alfie from the channel Witchbase. He's got a fantastic channel, and we've been doing a series tracing the entire history of heavy rock and bass guitar in its style, evolution, technology, everything, all the way up to present day. And we even talk at the end of it about why we're in a completely different era from any of the others, starting all the way back in the 60s. And why it's different, where it might be going. It's a really great conversation. And if you haven't checked it out, info card up there, but it goes back and forth in between our 2 channels. And I think it's well worth a watch and a listen if you're all into metal bass, which I figure you kind of got to be if you're here. Number 3. I'm going to be starting a series, and it's going to take me a while to prepare for it, but it's going to be something completely unique and more in depth than anything I've been able to find on YouTube. It's going to take a lot of work, and I'm going to put a lot into it. But again, you really want to be subscribed to catch all of this because there's going to be live chats involved. I'm going to be having a Patreon style type of thing where there's going to be extras and even more in depth, but it's really going to cover metal songwriting, performance, recording, everything from the just most basic of ideas about how you want your band to sound to songwriting, to organizing and arranging, to the recording process, to the roles of the different instruments. More in depth than I've been able to track down anywhere, and specifically about metal production. It'll apply to other things, but we're really going to go in deep. Like I said, I'm going to need some prep time for this one, and it's going to mean me putting a ton of recording pieces out and really getting an inside view. So I want to make sure that all those details are there and that it's done in a way that everything I try and get across makes it over and details don't get skipped. So I'm looking forward to it. But again, it's going to be a lot of work and everything. So as I gear up for that, I'm probably going to ask for input from everybody in the live chats and things like that. So again, that's why I'm hoping everybody will jump on board and get with me in the upcoming things. And I hope that I can put out something that'll really stand the test of time for a bit and be a resource for everybody who is trying to make great metal bass lines and great songs and have a metal band and all that kind of thing. So with that out of the way and that said, let's get into the topics. The constant complaint that bassists of all kinds tend to have, but especially metal bassists, is I can't hear myself. There's a constant war going on in between usually bass and guitar, and it goes back and forth, each of them in this ever-escalating volume war. And there's one thing that seems to constantly get missed, and that is your volume should be the last thing you reach for. There's an idea called complementary EQing, And that's what's actually going to get you to cut through a mix. And I've talked about it on some other Metal Bass Mondays and some of the videos about recording. But really getting an understanding, I would really recommend learning about EQ. And your EQ is actually the first thing you should be moving towards to try and get yourself heard, not your volume knob. Really, when you look at EQ and you start to understand that anytime there's two instruments competing for the same frequency, the one capable of the most decibel loudness is the one that's going to win out. And in our case, that's almost always going to be the guitar. A 100-watt, power saturated, massively distorted guitar is going to win out almost every time. So we have to find those places where it is, and it has to lock together like puzzle pieces. And if you're not fighting the same frequencies, it's no longer hard to hear. If you keep turning up but still can't hear what's going on, or you still feel lost in the back, it's because your EQ is competing with the guitar player. And what you have to do is learn a little bit about EQ and learn to punch through the holes that are left. And then this runs into the second problem, which is that so many people get their ideal sound by themselves. And this is usually a problem with guitar players who scoop out all their mids and everything too. You get that smiley face graphic EQ thing going. And that sounds great when you're sitting in your bedroom or something, but then you put it in with instruments and it's just horrific. It just turns into a wash of noise and you can't pick out anything the player's playing. But let's say even if you had a guitar player who played like that, then you need to zero in on those mids in the middle. And what winds up getting most players lost is that they develop their sound away from each other and then just expect that when it comes together, they'll have magically figured out that these things just work great. And it's not that way. The ideal sound in your head may not work with what's going on with guitars. Now, it's not to say you can't have it. And here's the weird one and the secret to it all, is that because those holes are almost like leaks for your sound, where so much of it's going to get hidden, you have to realize that your ideal sound may not sound like your sound when you start playing with the other instruments, because only that select part of your sound is the one that's going to be audible. It's really kind of strange and funny, and doing any kind of recording, you generally come to the realization that to get something to sound how it does on its own, you have to heavily modify it in a mix. So don't be completely attached to your sound, and this is why I often recommend having an A and B channel or two different channels or just some way of modifying your sound so you have an in the mix sound. And then when the other instruments cut out or you're doing bass solo work or doing a loud fill or something, you have your B sound, which is your standing by itself, just ideal, exactly how you want it to sound. Because again, the irony is that once you go back into the mix, a lot of times there may be this hole where the guitars have left that's just right up around 700K, or 700 hertz rather, and all of a sudden you have this honky plastic sounding tone when everything's going on and you don't understand why. It's because everything else in your sound is being masked, and then that one thing is being highlighted because there's room for it. So strangely enough, you may have to cut that to bring up everything else and be able to be heard exactly the way you want to be perceived. So go to your volume knob last. As long as you're at a sufficient volume, start messing with the EQ to see how you can cut through, and then modify your in the mix band tone. I guarantee you, you're going to wind up sounding better in the end. And you're going to cut through, and even if you have the greatest sound in the world, if it's being masked and nobody's hearing it, it doesn't matter and your bass line is lost, so your entire musical statement is shot. That's not optimal. So make sure you get heard by going to your EQ and, have the guitar player play for a bit and just try messing with it. And when you suddenly can hear yourself, you'll know that's where the holes are left. I'm going to do a video on this coming up where I'm actually going to take the same bass line and drums, and we're going to get a good tone, and then I'm going to have 3 of the same guitar part but played with a different sound over it without changing anything else, and have it so that everybody can hear how as the guitar sound changes, all of a sudden the bass seems either louder or quieter, or it sounds radically different. So that'll be a really good kind of head check and way to start understanding how this stuff gets around. So watch out for that one. I'm going to try and get that knocked out here shortly. But EQ first, volume second. Learn it, know it, live it. Next topic. So a question I get asked a lot is about endorsements. And I think there's a lot of confusion about it, and a lot of people get into endorsements for the wrong reasons. As far as myself, I've been with a number of companies. I'm endorsed with a few companies now. I have just strong relationships with a few, and I use their gear. I've seen people who will approach companies, they have their promo packs, they hammer down their door. Usually I find the people who do a hard sell to a company or go after them do it for one main reason, is they're hoping to get free equipment. Who doesn't want free gear? But in my opinion, and I know people are going to, fight me about this one sometimes, but that is the most ass backward way about it. And you're shooting yourself in the foot in the long run, and you're not seeing the long-term benefit. Sure, it would be great to get a free guitar or get, some pedals or get strings or something. But what you really want to be looking out for is a relationship with a company that respects you as an artist and is willing to work with you to further your career. That may mean you're not getting stuff for free. That may mean you're either getting it at a discount or you do pay full price for things, but you have a good relationship. That, in the end, is going to be the biggest benefit for you. In today's music, having a presence is 1,000% the mission. And if you're getting free guitars, but nobody hears you play them, how did that help? The other thing is that people go at it from the what can they do for me angle, and that never works. Why should these people care about you? Why are they're not running a donation service or some kind of charity? Just because you might be able to be, to play good or you're deserving of free gear, these people work too. And, they're not just handing out stuff. And a lot of people get really upset when they put their packages together and they don't understand, well, why can't I have this? Or why did this guy get that? It's always going to come down to what are they getting out of giving something to you for? Do you have a media presence? Do you have a fan base? Are you an influencer of any kind? I can list a couple of different ways that I've wound up with different endorsements and things, but here's the interesting piece of information, at least as far as I'm concerned, with the endorsements I've had, which probably about 15 different companies over the course of my playing, and that is I've never asked for an endorsement, ever, and I won't. I look at it in the same way that it should be done, kind of like dating, in that you don't beg for something. You prove your worth and you let them come to you. If you're the right person and if you've got it going on, those dates are going to line up at your door. You don't have to go out there begging for people. And that's the best mission of all, because you get twofold benefit. One is you refine yourself. Be the best artist you can. Have your marketing together. Have your social media down. Have your live shows down. Have the kick-ass songs, but have it so that people are seeing and hearing you. And then that's going to make a company look at them and go, this is a person who's going to represent us well. That we're glad that people recognize them as someone who uses our equipment, because when they see them, they want to be them. And they think that part of that road is getting our gear. That's the crucial part of it. If you look at it just from, oh, can I get a couple free things here and there? That's great. You saved yourself a few $100 or something, but your career isn't going anywhere and it isn't helping you. You would have been better to spend a couple of weeks at a crappy job and saved up the money to buy whatever this was and not had any obligations. And that's the other thing is, don't go after endorsements because they're free. Go after them, or at least create a relationship, because you want to work with people who make things that you like and respect. I've seen so many guys, especially like the endorsement tidal wave I watched in the early 2000s and stuff, where a lot of companies were more able to give out a lot of gear. And these guys would just go to any company that would give them free guitars. And the turnover was unbelievable. I'd see like this person's with ESP, and all of a sudden now they're with Schecter, and now they're with Mayonis, and then there was Strictly 7. And then these guys were moving company to company constantly. And it was just to get free stuff. And then I knew a lot of the A&R guys and the artist reps at these places, and they would go, we gave this band a couple of guitars and stuff, and we never even heard from them. They didn't even send us pictures of themselves using the gear for us to put on the website to advertise them. I mean, that's now you're in a contractual obligation with somebody possibly, and you're not even working with them to get promotion for yourself. That's the dumbest possible thing. That's the thing you should be shooting for more than the free gear. So you really have to look at it that way. And the last thing is that don't look at it as an endorsement. There's a more important thing, and that is a relationship. And that's where behind the scenes, you really want to be known as not just the good musician, not the person with their business together, but the guy who's not a prick or girl. You don't know how many times that these, endorsement grifters, they know who you are. They all talk to each other. It's an incredibly small community in music gear manufacturing. They know who you are. And the irony is, if you get in good with one company and have a good relationship, a lot of times they'll recommend you to someone else because they go, hey, we're working with this person and they use your gear too. They're awesome. You should, take a look at them. I've had people reach out to me because of my relationship with one company, and I hadn't even thought about developing a relationship with that secondary company, but they came to me because of it. And the last part is that we're human beings, and human beings are social animals. And that means that at the end of the day, people want to work with people they like, and people they think are their friends, and people who do for them. And there's a great Chinese term that translates into English called the gift before taking. Learn this. This will get you further in music, in life, in relationships than anything else. And what it means is when you do for someone without asking, just do for them, that they're far more likely to want to do something in return, or if you're in need at some point, to honor that request or help you, because the human sense of obligation and interaction will usually get somebody to want to help you, or at least feel mildly obligated, if you did for them unselfishly at first. And that's the key, unselfishly. This has wound up more times being punched in my face until I got the point over and over. Some quick examples of how I wound up with endorsements, and you can see how the relationship always wins. The personal touch, the personal interaction. To prove the relationship thing, I wound up with an endorsement by one time when I very first started the channel. I did an outreach to a company. I sent them my whole bio. I sent them some things and told them who I was and everything. I didn't ask for an endorsement, but I did say, I love what you're doing and I use some of your stuff and I'd like to review some of your gear. Do you have any, not just to give me, but something you could send me that I could, have for a while and put up some reviews and demos? I never got an answer. Never returned a message, never heard from them. Scroll ahead a little bit later, I'm at the NAMM show. And I see the reps of this company. I go and talk to them, and it turns out that they're really cool people. And we hit it off, and we had, a good time talking and just talking music and commonality. And I told them how impressed I was with their equipment, and they could see I obviously knew the gear, and I talked about it. Then they checked out my channel after that. Then all of a sudden, they approached me about an endorsement. That was offered to me right there. It's because they found that, one, I was actually a user, and that's another point too. Don't approach a company if you don't use their gear. You have zero interest other than getting free stuff as far as they can see. So that's a no-go, and it's a black mark against you. Go to a company whose stuff you would buy if they didn't give it to you free. You're more likely to develop a relationship with them. And again, free isn't the end result. But going back to the thing about being offered it, that was the whole thing. They got, one, the personal relationship with me, and we actually turned out to like each other. And B, they saw that they already had a gift for me and that I had shown their stuff as part of my rig for a while. So they knew I was going to stick around and that I represented them, and they liked that. And then it got offered to me. Another one was that I was another contact, ironically, I made at an AM show, just became friends with some people that were in a band. They were working on some kind of industrial stuff, and I was doing production work for a number of bands at the time. And they asked me if I would, try out some remixes, doing a few things. So I worked with them. They were impressed with what I did. We wound up becoming good friends. And as it turns out, one of them was the rep for a company that I hadn't really worked with at that point. But he asked me what I thought of their stuff, and I gave him a very honest opinion, which at the point wasn't all that great because I didn't know their stuff and had had one bad experience. Later on at a party hosted by this person, I see some of their gear and I get my hands on it and I go, you know what, I got to change my mind here. This is actually really great stuff. And through further talking, he was already friends, and they looked at me and went, okay, he's got his own band, he's touring, he's teaching at Musicians Institute, he's doing overseas gigs in markets that we want to get into, and he's starting up a gear channel, plus he runs his own studio, which I did at the time, and he's an influencer to all the bands that come in there. And he talked to me and realized there was benefit for him, and I had done things for them as far as production work, so the endorsement got offered. So you see how these things happen, and it's not about, hey, I'm really great, oh, if you could send me a guitar, I'd rep you guys so hard. Don't tell them what you're going to do later. Tell them what you've already done. That's the best way. Again, refine yourself. Be a badass. Show off the gear. Have your marketing together. Really get yourself together. And the funny thing is, at the end of the day, then, you refine yourself to that point and you become less and less in need of those endorsements. And then they start to show up. So that's my part on endorsements. I know other people that are like, no, you should have your promo pack and do all this together. I'm telling you, my experience every time is the guys who go after it for the free gear or the ones who are really aggressive. It's like, again, a date that comes on really strong. They seem to disappear just as quick. Go for the long term and the benefit will be there. I absolutely promise it. I'm going to put my last question to everybody at the end, just because I want to see how many people actually make it this far this time. I'm going to put together a lesson soon, and I'm going to make it about one of two things, and I'll let the audience pick. So, would you rather have a thing about a new thing on tapping and a different approach than what I've shown in the other video that I have on it? Or would you like to see something on the use of harmonics? Let me know in the comments below, and that'll be the next technique video that comes up. So that's going to do it for this Metal Base Monday. If you are in a country affected, be safe, be healthy, practice woodshed, go through those videos. There's plenty of material on my channel and others, and we'll weather this together and then come out ripping out with some new music and new chops. So I'll see you on the other side of that. Take care. I'll see you on the next one.